Chapter 22. Come away from there, a harsh voice rasped. Talia watched as strong hands pulled Rudy and Chandel away. They didn't struggle. Two young male attendants led them to the door. Arnold, Mayrose, did you get confused? One of the attendants asked gently. Did you go to the wrong room? Shivering, her chest still heaving with fear, Talia shut her eyes and listened until their voices disappeared down the hall. She could still feel the girl gripping her hair, still see the boy's leering grin. Arnold, Mayrose. Oh, Talia let out a low moan. They weren't Rudy and Chandel. Of course they weren't Rudy and Chandel. They were just two patients who had wandered into the wrong room. Talia wrapped her arms around her chest, held herself tightly. What is wrong with me? What is wrong? Seth chewed his pencil and studied the math problem. He scribbled some numbers on a sheet of scratch paper, then shook his head. No, he thought, that can't be right. Think, he urged himself. Concentrate. The phone rang, a piercing noise like an alarm going off. His concentration shattered like a pane of glass. Angrily, he reached for the phone. Hello. It was Talia, calling from home. She had just been released from the hospital. Seth? She sounded breathless, upset about something. What are you doing? Right now, he asked. Yes, she replied, this very minute. Seth cast a mournful glance at his math homework. Nothing, he lied. At least, nothing important. Can you come over? She asked. I really need to talk to you. You can talk to me now, he told her. I need to see you, she insisted. It's really important. Okay, he said inside. Talia could be so demanding sometimes, especially lately. When should I come over? Now, she said, as soon as possible? He nodded wearily. I'll be right there. A short while later, Seth parked in front of Talia's house and walked up the steps to the front door. He rang the bell. This had better be important, he thought. Talia opens the door without a word of greeting. She grabbed him by the arm and led him into the den. She seemed agitated. Her blue eyes glittered with a mysterious light. Talia sat down on the couch. She patted the cushion beside her. Sit down, she said. Don't be afraid. Afraid, thought Seth. Do I seem afraid? He settled onto the couch, reaching for her hand. I could never be frightened of you, he said soothingly. I know you'd never hurt anyone. You're probably the only one left, she muttered unhappily. Everyone else thinks I'm some kind of psycho. They want to lock me up, Seth. That's not true, Seth lied to her. You just have to be patient. Right now, everyone's upset and confused. They don't know what to believe. There's a killer on the loose, and people are frightened. But they'll come around. Sooner or later, they'll realize that you're innocent. Talia jumped up from the couch. Her blonde hair gleamed in the soft light. Sooner or later, she laughed harshly. How long will that be? A month? A year? 10 years? How long will I have to wait? I don't know, Seth replied honestly. Only time will tell. Well, I can't take it anymore, Talia said fiercely. Seth sat up on the couch, suddenly on the alert. Something in her tone startled him. She wasn't like herself. What do you mean? He asked. Talia didn't reply. She laughed softly, then strode across the room. She knelt down in front of a cabinet that stood against the far wall. She pulled open the bottom doors, reached inside, and took out two mysterious objects. They were round, about the size of coconuts. What is she doing? Seth wondered. Talia placed the two objects on a bookshelf and turned to Seth. Well, she asked proudly, how do you like them? These are my trophies. Seth stared harder. It couldn't be. A strange, hoarse giggle escaped his throat. He jumped to his feet and took a step toward the bookshelf. Then he froze. Two human heads stared at him. The skin was green and shriveled. Patches of hair had fallen off. But Seth recognized them at once. Chandel and Rudy. Seth turned to Talia, his mouth open in an O of horror. I saved them, Talia explained casually. My trophies. A long silver object glinted in her hand. A hacksaw. Where did she get that? Seth raised both hands to protect himself. Talia moved forward with surprising speed, slashing the air with the blade of her hacksaw. I need another trophy, she told him. Chapter 23. No way, Talia declared. Her voice was firm and steady. I'm not doing it, Seth. There's no way I'm reading that story at tonight's meeting. But, Talia, Seth pleaded. Forget it, she snapped. Tears welled up in her eyes. I can't, Seth. Not after everything that's happened. I can't believe you called a thrill club meeting for tonight without discussing it with me. You didn't even tell me why I was coming to your house. And now Mara and Nessa are going to be here any minute. How can you ask me to read them such a horrible story? Seth didn't argue. He set the story down on his father's desk. No problem, he murmured softly. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. I just thought you might want to read something tonight, for old time's sake, so everyone would know you were okay. How could he even think that, Talia wondered. How could he even dream that I might read a story about saving Chandel's and Rudy's heads as trophies? A story in which I admit that I'm an insane murderer. Sometimes Seth was so insensitive it was beyond belief. And what if the police got hold of this story? What if they used it against her in court? Her hearing was only 2 weeks away. It would just confirm everything that people thought about her, that she was some kind of heartless, unfeeling monster, a person who killed her friends without the slightest trace of remorse. Talia slumped on the couch, suddenly exhausted. The doorbell rang, and Seth rushed out of the room to answer it. Talia didn't like being alone in Seth's father's study. She glanced around uncomfortably. The walls were cluttered with exotic artifacts from New Guinea. Shields, primitive swords and spears, and lots of grotesque masks, like the one Seth had worn to her house that night. This was the room where Dr. Varner had died, Talia remembered with a shudder. Died at his desk of mysterious causes. Seth returned a moment later with Mara and Nessa in tow. Except for her brief glimpse of Mara from the hospital window, Talia hadn't seen either one of them since she had been taken to St. Elizabeth's. She couldn't blame them for staring, for trying to figure out if she was the same old Talia, or a new person entirely, a dangerous, psychotic killer. It's me, she pleaded silently. Talia, your friend. Please don't hate me. Hi, Nessa said warmly. It's so good to see you, Talia. Same here, Talia smiled. She wanted to hug Nessa, but she didn't know if it would make Nessa nervous. She remained seated on a couch. It's really great to be back. Mara hung back, hiding part way behind Nessa, tugging nervously at her shirt cuffs. She's hiding, Talia thought. She's embarrassed to see me, especially since she's been spending time with Seth behind my back. How is the hospital? Mara asked. Did they treat you okay? It was fine, Talia replied. They gave me shock treatments only when I wouldn't eat the food. She thought it was a pretty good joke, but no one laughed. It's so tense in here, Talia realized. It's like we're strangers. Hey, lighten up, guy, Seth exclaimed. This isn't a funeral. We've been to too many funerals lately, Mara reminded him, staring at the floor. I've been to enough funerals in the past month to last forever. Nessa tucked a strand of brown hair behind her ear. I don't know, she said gloomily. I'm not sure we should have this meeting. After everything that's happened, maybe we should just disband the Thrill Club. Mara disagreed. We enjoyed it before. We have to try to enjoy our lives, don't we? Talia didn't say anything. She still hadn't gotten over the fact that there were only 4 of them present. She kept glancing at the doorway, waiting for Chandel and Rudy to arrive. A Thrill Club reunion. Seth slid closer to her on the couch. He placed his hand softly on her shoulder. Talia, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, why don't you read your story? Talia glanced up in surprise. For a moment she didn't understand what he was talking about. What story? She asked. Seth held a sheaf of papers in his hand. He must have grabbed them from his father's desk on his way back into the room. This one, he said. The one you read to me before Nessa and Mara got here. Talia felt trapped. How could she deny writing the story when Seth held it in his hand? And how could she refuse to read it? Why is Seth doing this to me? She wondered. I don't feel like it, she said truthfully, hoping that would get her off the hook. Go ahead, Nessa said encouragingly. I've really missed your stories. You're such a great writer. Talia wished she could tell them the truth. I didn't write this story, or the last one, or the one before that. Seth did. He's the great writer, not me. But if she admitted all that, it would make her seem like a liar, and she needed her friends to believe her right now. If you don't feel like reading it, Seth told her, I'll be happy to read it for you. He tapped the rolled-up story impatiently against his knee. I think it's really great, he told Mara and Nessa. One of Talia's best. Seth, please, Talia thought. Why are you doing this? Why are you being so heartless? I was hoping you'd read us a story, Mara added, in a surprisingly kind voice. What can I do? Talia wondered. Think, she told herself. There has to be a solution. And, suddenly, one came to her. The perfect solution. She would begin the story as Seth had written it, but then change it at the end. Instead of taking Chandel's and Rudy's heads from the cabinet, I'll just have them be shrunken heads from New Guinea. That will be creepy enough, without hurting anyone's feelings. Seth won't dare complain. Okay, she thought. Here goes. Talia took the papers from Seth's hand. cleared her throat, and began to read in a soft, shaky voice. Seth chewed his pencil and studied the math problem. Once she started, her nervousness disappeared. The sound of the words soothed her, the power of the sentences. She saw the scene unfolding in her head, Seth driving over to her house, sitting down next to her on the couch, watching as she bent down and opened the cabinet. She pulled open the bottom doors, reached inside, and took out two mysterious objects. They were round, about the size of coconuts. Talia paused to collect her thoughts. Now I have to begin improvising, she told herself. Forget the words on the page. She glanced up at her audience. Mara and Nessa watched her closely, nervously waiting for the next sentence. Then she turned her eyes to Seth and noticed something strange. He wasn't even paying attention. He was listening to his Walkman, moving his lips to some private music. He wasn't listening to a word she said. I can change anything I want to, she realized. I'll never even know. Then she blanked out for a second. A sharp buzzing noise erupted inside her head. Ow! She cried. What's the matter? Asked Mara. Nothing, Talia replied uncertainly. What's going on here? She wondered. What's this buzzing in my head? Keep reading, pleaded Nessa. I'm dying to know what happens next. Despite her plans to make up a new ending, Talia began to read the story Seth had written for her. What's wrong with me? She wondered. Why can't I stop myself? As she read the frightening scene, she glanced up at Seth. He was watching her now, smiling. Before she knew it, she had reached the chilling end of the story. She moved forward with surprising speed, slashing the air with the blade of her hacksaw. I need another trophy. Feeling shaky, Talia lowered the pages of the story and glanced at her audience. Mara and Nessa stared back at Talia with wide eyes, their expressions troubled. It's a creepy story, Talia, Nessa declared, but how could you even think of reading it to us? I mean, 2 of us have died, and... The buzzing in Talia's head drowned out Nessa's voice. All at once the buzzing faded, and a voice started speaking in her head. A new voice, a soft, commanding voice. The hacksaw, it said. Go pick up the hacksaw. It's on top of the desk. Talia felt herself moving awkwardly across the room. She stopped at the desk. She reached inside a plain brown shopping bag. She pulled out a hacksaw. She ran her fingertips softly over the jagged teeth of the blade. Good, said the voice in her head. Now go get another trophy. Chapter 24. Her head buzzing, Talia moved stiffly across the room, waving the hacksaw in front of her. Mara, commanded the voice. Go to Mara. Helplessly, Talia followed the command. She advanced across the room and stopped in front of Mara, who stared up at her with terrified green eyes. Talia lowered the hacksaw blade to Mara's neck. Stop it, Talia, Mara cried. This isn't funny. From the corner of her eye, Talia saw Nessa rise from her seat. Watch out for Nessa, urged the voice. Don't let her sneak up on you. Moving to obey, Talia turned to threaten Nessa with the hacksaw. Sit down, Nessa, Talia heard herself say, in a thick, distorted voice, unless you want to be next. Reluctantly, Nessa sat back down. She turned frantically to Seth. Do something, Nessa shouted. There's something wrong with Talia. Go get your trophy, ordered the voice in Talia's head. Talia turned back to Mara, who was cowering in her chair, trying to protect her face and neck from the hacksaw. Get your trophy. Now, the voice commanded. Talia raised the hacksaw high above her head. Mara screamed and tried to squirm away. Talia furiously grabbed a handful of Mara's short red hair. She slashed the blade toward Mara's throat, but a hand pulled her away. Nessa. Are you crazy? Nessa shrieked. Are you crazy? Free yourself, said the voice. Don't let Nessa stop you. With a powerful tug, Talia tore herself from Nessa's grasp. She stumbled backward toward Dr. Varner's desk. Talia, it really was you, she heard Nessa scream. Nessa moved to shield Mara with her body. You really did kill Chandel and Rudy. Get rid of Nessa, said the voice. She knows too much. Talia obediently charged across the room, grabbed Nessa by the shirt collar, and prepared to take her trophy. Chapter 25. Without hesitating, Talia pressed the sharp teeth of the hacksaw blade against the soft flesh of Nessa's throat. Now, commanded the voice. Now. Nessa shrieked as Talia slid the blade across her neck. Talia cried out as Mara slammed into her hard, tackling Talia around the waist. Talia crashed to the floor with a loud groan. The hacksaw flew out of her hand. She saw it slide across the floor. "It's under the desk," said the voice in Talia's head. "Tear yourself loose and get it." The room whirled crazily as Talia wrestled with Mara on the floor. She wrapped her hands around Mara's throat. Mara squirmed out of her grasp and fought back ferociously. Glancing up as she struggled, Talia saw that Seth hadn't moved from his chair. His head was lowered. The headphones were still covering his ears. The voice spoke inside of Talia's head again. "Come on," it urged. "You can do better than that." Mara gained control, straddling Talia's chest with her knees, pressing down on Talia's arms. Talia gasped for breath. She lay flat on her back, glaring up at Mara from under strands of her loose blonde hair. "Had enough?" Mara, red-faced, panting, demanded. "Play dead," said the voice. Talia did as she was told. Sensing Talia's surrender, Mara relaxed her grip. "Now," shouted the voice. With surprising quickness, Talia freed one of her arms and reached up to grab a handful of Mara's red hair. Mara cried out in pain, but she didn't give in. She dug her knees harder into Talia's shoulders until Talia's fingers loosened, releasing Mara's hair. "Had enough?" Mara asked again. "Now," the voice commanded. "Do it." Obediently, Talia arched her back, lifting Mara's knees into the air. With an animal grunt, Talia twisted her body hard. Mara cried out as she lost her balance and toppled onto the floor. "The desk," said the voice. "The hacksaw is under the desk." Talia squirmed free and crawled across the floor toward the desk. Her fingers were within inches of the hacksaw when Nessa came flying across the room, flinging her body on top of Talia's. Mara scrambled to Nessa's aid. Together, the two girls pinned Talia to the floor. "Fight!" screamed the voice. "You can do it!" Once again, Talia struggled violently to free herself, thrashing like a wild animal caught in a trap, but Mara and Nessa held on. Talia's body went limp. "This is bad," said the voice. "I'm going to have to handle this myself." Chapter 26. Talia blinked her eyes and gazed around in confusion. "Where am I?" she wondered. "What is happening?" "Mara? Nessa? What are you doing?" she asked in a halting voice. You're hurting me. Let me up." "You're not fooling us," Mara cried breathlessly. "Don't pretend, Talia." "Ow! Let me up," Talia protested. "You're hurting my arms." The two girls kept her pinned to the floor. Talia realized she hadn't the strength to fight them. She felt exhausted, completely drained. "Where's the hacksaw?" Nessa asked. "Under the desk. She can't reach it," Mara replied. "Hacksaw?" Talia cried. "What hacksaw? What's happened? Please, let me up." "We can't let you up till the police come," Mara told her. She turned to Nessa. "I can hold her. Hurry, call the police." Talia lay helpless on the floor as Nessa climbed to her feet and hurried to the phone on the desk. As she reached for the phone, Seth suddenly came to life. He pulled off his headphones and leapt to his feet. As he grabbed the receiver from Nessa's hand, his mouth curled into a cruel smile. "No one escapes tonight," he told them calmly, coldly. "No one escapes." Chapter 27. "No one escapes," Seth repeated, glaring at them. Talia felt Mara let go of her arm. She sat up, her head spinning. "Seth?" Talia called shrilly. "What are you saying?" Seth uttered a harsh laugh. His eyes gleamed excitedly. "Talia, haven't you guessed? My father didn't die. He escaped." Talia felt a wave of fear sweep over her. "What is happening? First I wake up on the floor, my entire body aching, and now Seth seems to have totally snapped." "Seth, you're talking crazy," she told him. "Please, calm down. Try to calm down." Seth wasn't listening. "No one escapes," he muttered again. "No one." "Seth, please," Talia begged. "You're not making any sense." She watched Mara and Nessa gaping at Seth in open-mouthed confusion. "My father escaped," Seth repeated, ignoring Talia's pleas. "But no one else." "Your father what?" she asked. "Escaped," Seth repeated impatiently. "He didn't die. He left us. He escaped from us." "But, Seth," Mara cried in confusion, "you know your father is dead. We were with you at the funeral. He's buried in a new cemetery on Old Mill Road." Talia climbed unsteadily to her feet, her eyes on Seth. Poor Seth, she thought. He's been so stressed out about his father's death, and now he's totally lost it. "Don't move," he told them. He stepped over to the couch and pulled the cassette from his Walkman. Then he crossed the room and shoved the cassette into a tape deck on a shelf above his father's desk. A few seconds later, strange chanting filled the room. Talia's entire body convulsed in a cold shudder. She remembered the tape. It was the chanting tape Seth had played for her that night in his room. Yes, she remembered how the chanting had stuck in her mind, how it had made her feel so strange, so dizzy and weak. Seth lowered the volume on the tape deck. My father did escape. This is no ordinary tape, he explained. Don't you remember what it said on the case, Talia? Remember the label on the case? Yes, Talia replied. It said transfer tape. That's right, it's a transfer tape, Seth replied, staring at her. The emptiness in his eyes gave her a chill. It's a mind transfer tape, Talia. My father brought it home from the New Guinea tribe he studied. If you join in, if you chant along with the voices, your mind floats free of your body. Seth let out a bitter sob. My father played it and escaped to someone else's body, and he never came back. Seth's eyes got wilder as he continued. One night I played the tape. I chanted. I found out what the tape can do. His eyes narrowed, his face contorted in a bitter sneer. Do you know how much it hurt me when I figured it out, Talia? Do you know how much he hurt me? Talia didn't know what to say. She could hear the pain in Seth's voice, but how could she help him? It was all too confusing, too weird. Seth, she pleaded, sit down, let's talk about this. No, Seth shrieked, slamming his fist down on top of his father's desk. Nessa and Mara cried out in alarm. He's totally out of control, Talia realized. He could do anything. He could kill us all. What are we going to do? What? So, welcome to the final Thrill Club meeting, Seth said bitterly. The three girls huddled together as Seth snatched a long New Guinean knife off the wall above the couch and began advancing toward them. It's me he wants, Talia realized. Seth raised the blade. You didn't care about me, he told Talia. You used me, that's all. Your math homework, your horror stories. I would have done anything for you. Anything. But you didn't care about me. Only what I could do for you. I knew you were planning to leave me just as my father did. Talia stared hard at Seth as he approached. Please, Seth, she pleaded silently. Please don't hurt me. Seth, it's just not true, she told him in a trembling voice. Seth shook his head impatiently. I know, you were ready to dump me for Rudy, Talia, but I couldn't let you do that. I wanted you to need me the way I needed you. I wanted you to depend on me, not just for your stupid math homework. The ice-cold smile spread across his face. I had to take drastic measures, so I used the tape. I chanted. I got into your head. I crept into your mind. I made you do all kinds of things. Talia's heart pounded in her chest. What? She whispered. What did you make me do? I made you kill, Seth exclaimed excitedly. Chandel's death gave me the idea. That one was just an accident. I got into your head planning to scare her, but we grabbed the wrong knife. Poor Chandel. I thought we had the joke knife. What a surprise. Seth laughed wildly. But Rudy, he had it coming, he continued, brandishing a long knife. Rudy wanted to steal you away from me, Talia. When I saw you kissing him that day in the gym, I knew Rudy had to go. I explained it all to Rudy while he choked and thrashed, and his eyes pleaded for mercy. Talia went cold all over. So that's what happened. That's why I couldn't remember. She stared at Seth in horror and disbelief. You used me to kill my friends? Seth nodded, his eyes completely dead. That's right, Talia. I used you, just the way you used me. I floated inside your mind. I was in control, and you didn't even know it. Talia couldn't speak. She just stared down at her hands, the hands that had killed Chandel and Rudy. But I didn't do it, she reminded herself. My hands did, but I didn't. Seth did it. Nessa broke the silence. Seth, she said softly, please put down the knife. Don't hurt anyone else. We're your friends. You need help, Mara added, her voice just above a whisper. If you put down the knife, we'll see that you get help. Really. Seth ignored their pleas. He reached for the stereo and turned up the volume. The rhythmic chanting filled the room. Seth began chanting along in a soft, droning voice. Cringing, terrified, Talia pressed her fingers to her ears to drown out the frightening sound. Stop it, she begged. Please, what are you doing? The chanting. It's going to kill us all, Mara screamed. Nessa covered her ears and shut her eyes. Stop it! Stop it! Before our minds all float away! Too late, Seth murmured. Chapter 28. Seth began chanting at the top of his lungs. "Grab him!" Talia cried. "Stop him!" Mara leaped forward and grabbed Seth's arm. The long-bladed knife slid from Seth's hand and bounced harmlessly onto the carpet. Seth chanted loudly. Then suddenly, he stopped. He gazed wide-eyed at Talia. "Too late," he repeated. "Too late." She saw his knees buckle. She ran to him. She and Mara lowered him softly to the carpet. Talia brought her face close to his lips. He wasn't breathing. His eyes stared up at her, blank, lifeless. His body felt so warm, but she knew he was no longer in there. "Seth escaped too," Talia murmured. "He isn't coming back. He's dead." Talia arranged the flowers in a vase and set them in the center of the kitchen table. She paused for a moment to admire the bouquet. "Thank you," she said. "They're really beautiful, but I told you it's not my birthday." Mara grinned. "Well, what else can we celebrate?" "How about all the charges against me being dropped?" Talia suggested. "I don't think the court believed the truth, but they couldn't prove I killed anyone." Mara shook her head. "You didn't kill anyone. Seth did. But let's just celebrate the fact that it's Saturday," she said dryly. "Okay," Talia agreed. "Yay, Saturday!" Her smile faded. "It's hard to forget about all that happened, hard to shut it away." Mara nodded, agreeing. "Poor Seth," Talia said. "I miss him. I really do. I know it's strange, Mara, but I think about him the way he was before his father died, before he changed. He was so smart and caring. That's the Seth I miss." Mara nodded. "I miss him too, Talia. We used to talk to each other all night, through our bedroom windows. He could be so funny sometimes." The room grew silent, each girl deep in her own thoughts. Mara glanced at her wristwatch. "Uh-oh, I've got to run. Give me a call tonight. Maybe Nessa can join us, and we can all go to the movies or something." "Sounds good," said Talia. She walked her friend to the front door. "Happy unbirthday," Mara said, stopping on the front stoop. "Happy Saturday," Talia replied. "Thanks for the flowers. Know what I'm going to do now?" "What?" Talia smiled. "I'm going to write another horror story." Mara's face went pale. "Talia," she said, "are you sure it's a good idea?" "Don't worry," Talia told her. "I'll make sure this one has a happy ending." This has been a Nightfall Audiobooks production of The Thrill Club by R.L. Stine, a Fear Street novel, Book 24. Hi, this is Chris again, and thank you very much for joining me for my production of The Thrill Club by R.L. Stine from the Fear Street series. I forgot all about this book. I forgot everything that had happened, and despite my reading it, 20 years ago, it was like a brand new novel. This was kind of fun. If you read the 99 Fear Street trilogy, Book 2 dealt with Brant's father. He collected artifacts from overseas, from somewhere, so that makes an appearance in this. And if you read Switched from the Fear Street series, that deals with minds moving in and out of different bodies, and that makes an appearance in this. So I guess it's a greatest hits kind of book, but it's not really a greatest hits book because this happened way before Switched, and I don't know in what relation 99 Fear Street happened to this. But it was fun. I remember that the chanting was a big deal and that was part of the story, but I forgot that Seth was using the chanting to transfer his mind into Talia's and using Talia to kill her friends. I mean, that's pretty insidious. It's like the perfect crime. But then Seth was an amateur, and like his father, he didn't know how to fully harness the abilities that tape had introduced to him. He lost his consciousness, and his mind just floated away, and now his body's going to die without something to drive it. That's a pretty terrible way to go. I wouldn't want to go like that. Wow. So even though I've read 50 of these R.L. Stine novels to date, he continues to impress me. He always keeps me guessing until the very end, and the ending is always worthwhile. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's above average, but it's always worthwhile. Do I recommend this novel? You know what? Yeah, I do. It's a good supernatural novel. It's got a lot of imagination. Slappy from the Goosebumps series appears. I mean, Rudy's dummy, that's clearly Slappy. So that's R.L. Stine writing characters into his own series. That's pretty cool. It's fun. So should you read this? Yes, I give it a 7 out of 10. It's a pretty good novel. It's got enough plot to keep you going forward, and the payoff is well worth it. And it was pretty short, so it was fun to do. This was a requested novel, so thank you very much for the request. What should I do next? I don't know. Please write me an email, nightfallaudiobooks@gmail.com. I am also on YouTube at Nightfall Audiobooks. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I love seeing what you have to say. I also have a Patreon page, patreon.com/nightfallaudiobooks. Any help would be greatly appreciated. So tell your friends, tell your mom, tell whoever you think would like to listen to me tell them tales from R.L. Stine. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.